Good evening, everyone. Today is the 10th of June, 2024. My name is Florent Paul Azim Hoberg, also known as Gyptasy, and today I want to provide some more insights about my project BoxyBSD. BoxyBSD is your destination for free BSD-based VMs, mostly only for the community, but also now open to everyone. Today, I want to cover the following things. So we will have a short discussion and talk about who invented BoxyBSD, when did it launch, why did I launch this project, what does it offer, who is targeted by BoxyBSD, how is the open source community involved into this, how does it work from a technical point of view, and what to consider when running such a service. So yeah, BoxyBSD was introduced in 2023 by me. It was first initially built in a completely different setup with a more or less limited scope because it was only running on FreeBSD with jails, but we will cover this in details later within the history part. It got completely redesigned from an architectural perspective with a completely different tool set. So we are not more running on jails, but currently more or less on some other hypervisor tools. Which also offers us much more flexibility and more complex setups. This is, of course, also a benefit for the users because they can build up some more complex setups, especially when it comes to something with boot loaders and so on. BoxyBSD is now more or less completely based on IPv6, which also offers us to run IPv6 only setups. But I already saw that there are some issues running only IPv6 for some setups, which also provides us now the possibility to give people IPv4 IPs, but the default setup is IPv6 only. And in 2024, BoxyBSD finally launched officially. So this means I got the domain for it and created a website so people have the possibility to sign up by a web interface or also by an SSH interface, but we will see this later in the technical part. Next to the probably most or best known service of the VMs, it also offers some more services. So BoxyBSD is mostly known for its VM service, but it also offers the shell accounts like the SDF and some other Tilde communities, but also web space and emails for more or less open source projects and individuals. As you already know, BoxyBSD is targeting mostly beginners. So the idea is to give beginners a place where they can start learning and being educated into BSD-based systems. They should also have the possibility to get in touch with real systems. So not only learning everything in theory, but also in practical. And this means people might not always have physical systems at home or systems that might be performant enough to run such workloads. And this is why I created the service to provide a solution for these people. But also there are people that only want to try IPv6 only setups. So what might happen if you do not have any IPv4 addresses, and also some other things like the community related content for building and testing open source tools, which is a really very important part. And we can already see it in the BSD Cafe, where people are already developing some tools and testing it on the BoxyBSD services. And this also means we cannot only run on AMD hardware or hardware architecture, but we should also consider running on other hardware platforms like ARM64, also RISC-V. And I'm really happy to say it here, and maybe some of you have already noted it in the Fediverse, but BoxyBSD is currently beta testing the ARM64 part, which is running very good at this point. But unfortunately, the RISC-V part is not that good right now. The biggest issue here is right now that we do not have any hardware virtualization capable boards. And this means that we still need to wait until this is publicly available to everyone. So as soon as there are boards in place, we can consider integrating them into the BoxyBSD service. All right, this all being said, also directly lets us into the question, where do people have the free possibility to learn BSD in practical? I guess after this service, nowhere. But now we have it, BoxyBSD. And this is also my motivation why I created this service. Sure, there are possibilities with VMs, but it requires more or less modern hardware with hardware virtualization. We can clearly see it mostly on Proxmox systems with KVM, QEMU setups, or also on the Hive setups. And yeah, not everyone might have such hardware in place. And even when having such a hardware in place, it does not mean that everyone has needed internet connectivity for running server daemons and so on. Yeah, saying server daemons, public and static IPs are, yeah, mostly needed. Oh, yeah, sure, I know, I'm aware of it. Not for every service, but when it comes to name server setups or also mail server setups, it might be better to have something like a static IP address where you can also create reverse DNS for it, and this makes life much easier. We often speak in the BSD Cafe and the BSD Pub meetings about boosting their awareness. And yeah, this is also a very important part. We want to attract more people into BSD-based systems like FreeBSD, OpenBSD, or NetBSD. And yeah, we need to provide them a place where they can learn about the benefits and the pros of it. And everyone in the community is already doing his part into this. We can clearly see it on a daily basis in the social media, with blog posts, and so on. Remember the last blog post of Stefano from the BSD Cafe regarding the performance benchmarking of Proxmox on Linux versus bhyve on FreeBSD, which was really insane. So if you haven't read it right now yet, give it a try, read it. It's really worth it. So yeah, basically, I think we all gained a lot from the open source community, and for me, it was time to bring something back with much value. And I had many ideas, but only contributing in code was somehow not enough to me. And I thought about what could be valuable for the community, what could be a huge benefit for the community, and how could other ones benefit from it. And yeah, this was how BoxyBSD got born, a place for the community, especially focusing on the BSD community to provide a place to learn and test. And yeah, together with the BSD Cafe, we have the possibility to educate new people, beginners, into BSD-based systems and to boost the awareness there. And I hope it really will work out. And I think it already looks like it got already appreciated by the community since there are already some projects using the service. Just remember in the last week's BSD Pub call where Harsha told us about his new project Freeway for FreeBSD. It got developed and tested on BoxyBSD. He tries it there. We have people that can retry it and recreate it on BoxyBSD, and I'm really happy to see it. You can now see how people came in touch with BSD, came to the BSD Cafe community, and how people came just together and work at something. So we have the Git service at the BSD Cafe, developers with passion who are developing some new applications and testing and having the CI/CD pipeline on BoxyBSD. I cannot really say how much I love this. It was really insane, and I'm really happy to see this. But let's have a short look at the history. We can basically split it into two parts. So my personal one and the project's history. And yeah, as I already said, I was really very happy to see how it worked out and got used by the community. And I'm only able to provide this because I became what I am through the open source community. All the years in the open source community provided me always the needed things regarding the open operating system, like FreeBSD, the tooling, like Ansible, and all the resources like GitHub, GitLab, and so on to learn and to grow. And I learned how to code in different languages, how DevOps works, and how the community works in general, and started at some point to involve me. And yeah, at that point, I was contributing to different projects like Argo CD or Ansible or the Garden project and so on. And this was already years ago when I already contributed code. But last year, there was something happening. There was something special. Last year, I met Stefano from the BSD Cafe, and I directly loved the way how he treated the BSD Cafe. And he brought me back into the community in a much more active way than I would have ever expected. And seeing this passion, how he handles the BSD Cafe, which also targets not only professionals, but also beginners. And I saw that we have synergies here. This directly brought up the question, how can we find valuable synergies between the open source community, the BSD Cafe community, and still focusing the BSD-based systems? And yeah, the result was BoxyBSD. And this directly leads us over to the next topic, the history part of the project. As I already said in the introduction, PoxyBSD was built completely in a different way. In the first iteration, it was only based on FreeBSD jails with a small web interface where people just pasted in their SSH pub key. It was also limited to IPv6 without any option for optional IPv4 addresses, which might be needed for some corner cases. While it never came out of the beta test, it was also only limited to the BSD Cafe community for the first test and only ran on AMD 64 architecture. But yeah, let's have a short look at the simple way how to create a jail back in these days. It was really very simple. So you just had a small web interface where you just pasted in your SSH pub key. All right, if YouTube loads. All right, right now. And then you just got returned your IP address. And afterwards, you were directly able to SSH into your new jail. That's it. I really loved this way. So this was really very easy. Yeah, I really loved how easy and simple this interface was, but it has also some limitations, and also the service got abused in a very bad way as soon as the URL got public available on the internet, and some people signed up and abused the services for spamming and so on. So yeah, I dropped the first iteration and stopped the whole service for several months, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to continue the whole service, but yeah, Stefano motivated me to keep it up, and the next iteration came up, but in a completely different way, where I created VMs instead of jails. And now let's see, what does it offer in that way? So PoxyBSD comes in default with one CPU, 1 GB of memory, 10 GB of disk space, and of course, it's free. This is absolutely free. You can use OpenBSD, FreeBSD, NetBSD, test as much as you want without any cost. So this is just a service to boost up the community. And if needed for some open source project like Freeway, we can also, of course, increase the resources if needed. So, as I said, the whole setup in the second iteration was completely different. Instead of using jails, I used now two different hypervisors. The reason for this is because PoxyBSD initially only ran on my own infrastructure. So I used my resource leftovers in my infrastructure to provide VMs to other ones. And my setup was not always the same. So I have different locations at different providers. And some setups are only running on FreeBSD, where I can easily use bhyve as a hypervisor. But some setups also are running on a Proxmox cluster system, and this made it a little bit more different and difficult to handle. And I think the easiest way to solve this was Ansible. How does it work? So Ansible can easily see by the inventory what kind of backend is used. So is it a bhyve host or a Proxmox host? And afterwards, it can decide what it needs to run and to perform. And therefore, I can, or Ansible at least, can easily communicate with the Proxmox API, which is really or well designed for such things. But it can also communicate with bhyve on the CLI by just running CLI commands. And yeah, that's the way how it works. So a user comes up with a request. He wants to sign up for the service, and he has two possibilities in this case. So the traditional way is a web interface, which we have at PoxyBSD. We can just have a short look at it. So we have PoxyBSD. We can clearly see that we have here the interface, so we can fill out the things. So we provide our nickname here. We can provide our email address because we get returned as a root password here. We can select between the systems we want to run. Currently, we also give the Open Solaris community some possibilities just here with OpenIndiana. Yeah, currently the interface is only limited to the AMD 64 hardware architecture because ARM64 hardware architecture is currently in beta testing. As I said, in default, we have only 1 GB of memory, also one CPU. Sorry, this was the CPU one. In default, it comes with a 10 GB of disk space, and we have the option of the free IPv6 space, but optionally, we can also get one for IPv4. But yeah, I do not get this for free, so I also being charged for this. This is the reason why I need to get money for this. And I would really recommend everyone to try IPv6 only, and even or more or less only if there's really a specific reason to get IPv4 to request this, but this can also be adjusted afterwards. This must not need to be done on the initial request. And currently we also have different IP networks here. So yeah, people can choose where they want to be located from IP space, but keep in mind, ProxyBSD is always located from the CPU, from the processing units in Germany. Yeah, and afterwards you just need to agree the terms and conditions and can request the VM. And afterwards you get back the root password and can log in immediately afterwards. Yeah, so this is the first way, but there's also another way by SSH. So in the past, someone might already have seen this on the Fediverse. There was, or is still, but it is currently deactivated in the moment, an SSH interface where people can just log in with their credentials, but they need to be pre-registered there, so they can be authenticated and can create and manage their VMs. This also offers more or less a self-service portal here, where people can just log in and reconfigure their VM. They can reset the VM. They can increase the resources in a limited scope. So this is more or less for community projects. Yeah, and this already lets us directly in the last point. So what to consider when running such a service? Yeah, when considering offering such a free VM service, several critical points must be addressed to ensure that the service is effective, secure, and compliant with the regulatories. And we are considering several things. So of course, we need to compute power. So we need to ensure that we have sufficient CPU, RAM, and storage resources available to provide this to our end users. We also need the scalability and to plan this and to be able to increase even if the load is increasing. And yeah, this is probably the biggest issue here because we can also see that with the network resources, if you get as an individual new VM or server system somewhere, you mostly only get a /64 IPv6 network and only a single IPv4 address. And this means it is not even that easy to provide such a service to end users, because end users also want to create more complex setups and need to test something like this, especially when running in previous DJs. And yeah, that made me think about this, and this was also the reason why I got back to Tunnel Broker with also known as CNET, where we can get /48 networks. And we can split it for each VM that we are providing to end users, dedicated /64 network. So each VM comes with a single IPv6 address and an additional /64 network where people can create their own things within the given network. And yeah, telling you something about the network. Each host node is connected by 2.5 gigabit LSCP bond uplinks, which also means high abusement potential, which requires continuous network monitoring and proactive alerts for signs of abuse and unusual activities here. And yeah, this is a very important thing, because the security aspect here is that the systems are publicly available on the internet and might not always have been set up in a proper way, because people are learning and practicing here, and they are not aware that they are maybe doing something wrong. And from a security perspective, we need to have everything monitored to see everything of unusual activities here. Also, a very important thing to consider here is that, yeah, people are trying to run illegal stuff on the systems, try to hack or scam, and try to torrent, download anything or even illegal things and run tornos on the systems. Or what has already been happened in the past, just to spam around. This was also the reason why I shut down the first iteration of ProxyBSD when it was only jail-based. And the last thing you also take care about is the privacy stuff for running a site, handling all the user data, because the European GDPR doesn't make the things very easy for us. So yeah, offering the ProxyBSD service is like a balancing on a monoline in high altitude. You can manage it, but it's not really very easy. And yeah, I hope to proceed with running the service, so the future will tell. But yeah, we will see. All right, this were some insights about the BoxyBSD service, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for participating in this call, and yeah, thank you very much. See you in the next BSD pub call.